All right, what is up, everybody? We're back for another episode of the Epic Growth Podcast live stream. I'm not sure what we're doing here, but anyway, we're going to talk all about how to optimize your Webflow workflow. We're going to talk about class naming, structure, client handoffs, literally the entire process, front to back. We're going to talk about how you can get better at all the things that make you great as a Webflow web designer. But before we get too far into this thing, let's up and grow. Ooh, we're back. What's up, Joe?
Hey, Reimar. I'm ready.
I know. I was just telling Joe, I'm a little nervous today. You know, I don't know. You don't usually get these little like butterflies before we go live here, but see a bunch of people hanging out with us. Thanks, everyone. Maybe it's because I was on vacation this weekend and I feel like this is a Monday and it should be a Tuesday. I don't know, right? But hello, Magdalena. Rohan's in the house. Ayush, Victor, let's see, Quentin, Karen, Scott Humphrey. What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another week. Again, we're going to dive into all about workflow optimization. But we got a little disclaimer. We're, like, these are turning into trends here. We're going to just start every
weekly
show.
Disclaimer.
That's right, with the disclaimer, Joe. So what's our disclaimer this week?
Well, our disclaimer is that everybody's different. You are a different person than each of us. You're a different person than somebody else in the chat. And these are things that we do. These are workflow optimizations that we found to be useful. You may find some of these and adopt them into your workflow. You may really be influenced by this video. There could be some of them that you don't follow, and that's okay because you have a different workflow, you're a different person, and this is not a strict step-by-step. This is a set of guidelines, a set of things that we like to do. So that's the disclaimer. Be you.
Yep. Yeah, and I agree. This is going to be stuff that works for us. We're going to talk about our personal experience, what works for us at Finsweet. But one of the goals to optimizing a workflow, there's a quote that says to improve is to change, to perfect is to change often. And so one of the things that you need to be thinking about as you think about optimizing your workflow is adjusting and adapting. Joe and I, right before this conversation, we're talking about workflows and systems as team management. And so we're always looking to think about how do you get better at just doing your work, right? I mean, this is the goal for what we're doing here. We're trying to be efficient. Technology allows you to multiply. No code is all about automation and scaling. And this show is all about growth. And so to do that, you kind of always have to be questioning and challenging your assumptions about how things work in order to potentially improve them. That doesn't mean you always have to change, but we're going to talk about all of those things today. So, Joe, you were laughing there. Is something coming in the comments? What's up?
Yeah, somebody said, nice haircut, Joe. Thank you. I did get a haircut on Saturday, so I appreciate that.
Looking fresh out here.
Thought that was funny. And actually, we're going to start with something that you do need to change. So most of this is not something that you have to change, but we're about to talk about something in pro versus amateur that you do have to change if you're doing it. The easiest way to spot a pro versus an amateur in a Webflow build is auto-named classes. This is a big no. If you come and try to work with us at Finsweet and you have auto-named classes, it's an automatic no. Why? That's a true sign of an amateur. That means that you're just adding elements to the page, adding classes that don't mean anything because you're just jumping into styles right away. This is a huge no, and it's going to ruin all of the workflow and all of the optimizations that we're about to talk about in this show.
Yeah.
So if you're doing that, if you have a bunch of div 45s and image 127s, you have to stop doing that.
Yeah. Yes, you have to stop, kind of, because I want to point out. Like,
I'd love to hear
I want to
this.
point out. Who was it? Ben Tossel or Tom? I remember who. One of them was talking about MakerPad recently, and they didn't have any kind of naming convention, style guide. They didn't use any of this stuff, right? They just went and started building, and you could just see it from the outside that the MakerPad website was kind of like a clusterfuck. But it was growing. It was valuable. It was their MVP. They just got acquired by Zapier. Like, So yes, again, going back to the caveat, this as a scope, what we're going to talk about is growing a Webflow agency, right? The goal here is to grow a Webflow web design business. MakerPad and those kind of like startups, people that are using Webflow to just kind of build their MVP and stuff, they don't have clients going back into their code. They don't have other people who need to go in and build inside of there. They might internally, but you can get away with a little bit more when you're just MVP building and exploring, and maybe you just started with Webflow. But class naming is an important thing, right? It's important for accessibility. It's important for Google. It's important for having other people being able to work on the projects. And so again, if you're going to be a pro Webflow builder, which is I think what we're going for the show, you do need to worry about this stuff. But if you're building a product and it's just going to be you in their building, and one day you want to get acquired by Zapier, maybe it's not as important. So just a full disclaimer. And I did see Ali said cough, MakerPad cough. So yeah, anyway, caveat there. What else separates pros versus amateurs, Joe? Because I agree. When you go in there and you see all those divs, 637 or whatever it is, like, you already know you're dealing with something that's not as well structured. But what are the other differentiators? And chime in, audience here. Like, what do you think? What do you think differentiates the pros from the amateur? I see on our notes here, seeing no sense of global classes to people who don't even understand classes, right? Which would lead back to auto-named classes. To me, I also think about like just some of the navigation structure, right? Some of the refinement of the project builds where you can kind of tell like, okay, they were trying something with the navigation here, but there's a reason navigations work a certain way. And so like, they should kind of just be up here. And so like, from a design standpoint, there's things that just, you can tell, right? Separate the two. And so we've talked about how to get better at design, how to kind of improve your sales process, how to sell the value of Webflow, et cetera. We've talked about all those things. And so those are things that a pro kind of takes into account, and all that reflects in the end of the work here. So, Joe, any other thoughts on pro versus amateur before we jump into the ideas of workflow?
Yeah. And maybe this one is more for intermediate to pro. And it's not seeing the right use of global classes versus combo classes. Incorrectly created combo classes is a sure way for me to say, hey, this person is not a pro. Maybe they're intermediate, maybe they can build a clean site, but they're missing a really important piece of global versus combo.
Yeah.
So that's another one.
And we're going to get into some of that. We
are definitely going to get into some of that.
People are asking here about, do you guys use BEM convention, BEM for the win? So we're going to talk about that. We're going to walk specifically through our client first naming convention, and actually we're going to release that. So just FYI, there's going to be a moment where we're going to hook y'all up with a freebie that we're looking to test as a value of being here in the audience with us real time. We're going to give some early access to a product that we're testing in this client first naming convention, a style guide, if you will. And so we'll get into all of that. But okay, without further ado, workflows matter, right? As we were discussing before, this is it. This is how you do your work. This is how you make your money. This is the process you go through to deliver the value to your client, to whoever it is that you're working with. And so, this all matters for a number of reasons. The stuff we're going to talk about matters for the usability of the website, the accessibility of the website, maintainability of the website, right? How do you build on more things? Collaboration. How do other people work with you on the website, right? So like if you're working one off, again, if you're Ben at MakerPad and you're just building, maybe it's not a big deal that you know where everything's at. But if you're going to have a team of 1 or 2 people that need to go, 3, 4, 5 people that need to go into a site and potentially make updates without creating a time bomb in there, you have to have some of this structure in place. And so all of this workflow matters for a number of reasons. Integrations is another one, right? Knowing how your data is structured and how you're going to name this stuff so that when you're dealing with integrations, you don't have form 3 or email 2. You have like the name of the specific form or the type of, structure that is going to send the data properly so that when you pull that into the next place, you know exactly how to map that data into the other fields. So any thoughts on, why workflow matters, why all of this stuff is important for people to kind of take close to heart, and maybe make that jump from amateur to pro. We might have people in the audience today or that are watching this in the future that are at that kind of amateur level trying to get into that pro level. And so why does this matter to them? Talk to me about why this is like stuff that you should pay attention to really early, right? Good habits from the beginning.
Well, it's for other people to go into the build. We keep giving this example of MakerPad and being in your own build 100% yourself. The reality is this does not happen. That your client may have to invite other people to the site or change from you as the developer because of a timeline issue, or they hired someone in-house, or you add someone to your team. This happens. You cannot build a Webflow site to only accommodate for yourself, because then your time is not available. You only have a certain amount of time, and if your time is required for the build, you're doing a disservice to your client, to the person you're building the site for. So that workflow does matter in, hey, I'm building a site for somebody else, not just myself. I can build it, I understand it, but when somebody else goes into it, they also understand it. And that's how I think of workflow in Webflow.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think you're kind of setting yourself up to not scale or to not be able to grow, because if you don't start thinking about these things at the beginning, you're just going to create real bad habits, and then you're almost setting a benchmark. You're setting a ceiling for yourself, because like if you come to us, or if you come to me, even when I was doing freelance stuff, and I've had this happen where someone's like, hey, I need you to look at my site. I need you to look at X. And I go in there and it's just a shit show of classes. I'm not going to touch it. I don't want to start playing. I don't want to spend 5 hours reverse engineering your build just to be able to understand that you used, some kind of column system instead of flex here, but it's not named. And I don't know, right? So you're really just creating hurdles for yourself in the future. So if you expect that you're building something that's going to grow, if you expect that you're building something that's going to be for production or for clients or for whatever, or even just for practice for yourself, for proper naming and thinking, you should start thinking about these things. And so it does matter. You may be dismissing it and saying, some people might say, well, you got to move fast and you just got to build stuff and whatever, I'll go back and refactor it and name it. Sure. That could be the case, right? We talk to designers all the time where they want to go in and they just start slapping stuff in, and sure, sometimes that could be valuable, but you're going to create more work to have to go back in and refactor. So it's just better to kind of learn as you go and try to kind of do and set yourself up for success, for growth as you're building these things, which brings us into design systems, right? This is the structure. This is how you kind of lay this stuff out. So Joe, can you help people, like, how did you go about thinking about the first design systems inside of Webflow? Talk to us a little bit about how you started to develop design systems for Finsweet, and how they become so valuable, especially as you start going into those larger client projects.
Sure. I made my first design system on the HelloSign website, and it was not intentional. I didn't intend for this to be a global system. I was just doing what they asked. Their designer said, hey, I want to make sure that vertical spacing is unified across the entire site. And at this point, I had no concept of class naming or organization or anything. But I took their requests and I said, all right, so let's have a class for each spacing. This was like 4 years ago. This is before there was Webflow documentation on this type of stuff. So I just built this and it worked. The whole site for years was based exclusively on this spacing system, and everything was unified. It had the 16 and the 32 and the 64, perfect, exactly what they wanted. And we found that that was more useful and more useful and more useful. And this design system really in Webflow is a class system. It's a class organization system. How can I put meaningful classes inside my build so that I can keep them global, and I can stay organized, and I can search for the classes, and I can see them in Navigator? And that's what we've been creating for the past year. We've been creating our own system for this. So we see a lot of people in the chat right now talking about what they use. We're about to talk about what we use and what we have created and what we're going to give to you at the end of this episode.
Yeah. And I want people to know that design systems don't have to be these crazy, complicated, multi-thousand item utility class things, right? Like we did the global open house a couple weeks ago, and Mason Poe led a chat about design systems, and it was really interesting to listen to him and Joe, and Mackenzie Child was in that. Not this Joe, it was another John. I'm sorry, John. And then Mackenzie Child was in there as well, talking about, and Max Joels, and they were all talking about design systems and how relevant they are to the business. And one of the more popular systems that's come out recently is Mackenzie Child's Hatch, and it's this thing that's just, you download this, it's like 2,000 utility and global classes, and it just becomes this big cumbersome thing. And even he said that it's not as optimized as it could be for Webflow builds, and that he's working on a second version of this. And so don't go thinking that just because you have some big, major, bloated like design system, it's the best, right? It should actually be fairly lean and allow you to adapt on the fly. So the design system is really just some kind of basic rules. It outlines your colors. It outlines maybe your button styles. That outlines your typography is a key, right? So in a design system, you should for sure outline your typography. If you're coming from WordPress or something like that, you're kind of used to a theme just doing all of that for you. And in Webflow, it's good to create some kind of style guide, some kind of page where then you manage all of these headings, H1, 2, 3, whatever, down chain, all of your rich text, your list items, all of this stuff. And then you can style that one place so that when you pull those elements into the site, you don't manage those styles on the page. You're just adding those classes to your elements once you drop them in. And so the design system, again, doesn't have to be some overly complicated thing. While you can go to learn from those, right? So I would encourage you to download, like I downloaded Hatch. I download every system that anybody publishes, right? If you publish something in the Clonable Showcase, you better believe that we're gonna go and look at it, and we're gonna dissect it, and we're gonna try to understand it, because we want to see what are other people doing, how are they working. And so the same curiosity you all have about being here in the audience to listen to how we do this, we have that as well about how other people are working inside of Webflow. And this is how we get better, right? As we look, we test, we validate, and we're always trying to optimize that. And so any other thoughts on design systems or the rules of design systems before kind of moving into that client first?
Absolutely. We have in our design system, our goal is to have the lowest learning curve possible. The more global classes you have, the more global systems that you have, the more pre-written classes that you have, the higher the learning curve is. And as you go a higher learning curve, maybe you're a pro at it and someone else that knows that exact system is a pro at it. But when you give it to your client or a different developer or somebody else, there is a learning curve, and you do not want to create a learning curve in your Webflow site. That defeats the purpose of Webflow. We want it to be fresh. We want it to be clean. We want someone to go in there and edit it with very minimal destruction.
Yeah.
And that's what client first is, that anybody can read it, anybody can go through it. And maybe they don't know too much about CSS, but they know what's going on. They know what's on the page. They know what type of content's there. And if they know the system, maybe they can even start to visually explain the page by just looking at the class names. Yeah. So that's what we're going for in our design system.
Yeah.
Simple, visual.
Right. And you shouldn't have to like learn a whole new language to remember your class structure, right? And so again, some of these themes are interesting from a context of like creating some basic layout and elements, and I think they're great for learning, and some of them are super valuable, right? There's some good systems out there, but also, thinking of your own. And again, what Joe was saying is you don't want to have this huge learning curve, and especially if you're trying to move fast, right? Some of the idea for having this style guide and this naming system is to be able to move fast and build things quickly. And that's not going to be the case if you always have to remember, like, how did so-and-so name X, Y, and Z? And then you have to go look it up in the classes, and it actually could slow you down. And so, all that is just to go into saying that this is why we've come up with this client first naming system, which is what we use internally. It's what Joe is a huge advocate of. So I'm going to let him kind of talk about this. And we do have, Joe, how do you want to handle that? Are we just going to paste this into the link into the comments here? How are we going to let people
for the 5-minute sign up?
Yeah, I think from like whenever we post that thing to the end of the episode, we're going to let people sign up to get access to a V1 or a public V1 of our client first naming system, which I have.
All right, let's
screenshots up. You tell me what you want to do.
Yeah, let's start talking about it. We'll show some screenshots and then we'll get the link in there.
Okay, great.
Cool. Let's get people excited for this. I'm excited about it. I can't stop thinking about it.
And share
This
your thoughts.
is
Tell us where we're wrong, right? Like, are we way off base? Like, this is what I'd like to see in the comments, because we're going to get into the Q&A here after we get into some of this. So tell us where we're wrong. Tell us what you agree with. You know, yeah, please share your thoughts with us in the comments. We're gonna, you know, the Q&A always gets real interesting. So go ahead and jump into this, Joe, and just wanted to prompt the audience there.
Sure. So we have built the client first Webflow style system, and you can bring up that first static graphic.
Will do.
This system is built for our clients, for other developers accessing the site, for anybody that comes and reads your class. So the concepts: clearly named classes. Classes, when they're named, should have a meaningful name. We should understand what a class is responsible for just by reading it. It needs to be marketer friendly. We have almost all of our clients interested in designer access after we build. We need this to be friendly to people who do not know Webflow. We have global styles that matter. We don't need everything to be global. We don't need a global grid system. We don't need a global flex system. We don't need every CSS property global. We need the important things global, like our outer page structure, like our margins, like our paddings. We use pixel-based sizing. This is not a requirement, but this is what it comes with by default. Why? EMs, as simple as it may seem to you, is not simple to our clients. So be careful using them. And if you do, make sure you can onboard somebody to that process. Comes with pixels. That's how a lot of our designs come in that we develop, and it makes sense for us. Beginners, welcome. If you have never touched Webflow before, this is a great system to learn on. We're going to go over the core basics of how your page can be laid out with just a few classes, and then how to build components and elements inside of that core structure. What it isn't: we don't do class abbreviations. We don't have developer lingo. We don't have math-based sizing. We don't have unnecessary utility classes, and you don't need web development knowledge to use it. So that's the system that we've built. And why should you use a system like this? Well, it's proven by people on our team, the Finsweet team, working on many different websites. We've used this system for big enterprise builds. We've used this system for our smallest one-page projects. It is beginner friendly. Our first initial beginner entry-level Webflow developers are using this. Our experienced 5-year plus Webflow developers are using this. Everyone likes it. Why? Because it's flexible. It gives you those base building blocks. It gives you a concept of how to approach your naming convention so that it can work for any site. Let's go to this next image here. Structure. We have a structure that is built for Webflow. We have our page wrapper for easy copy pasting. We have our section layer, which is just for Navigator and organizing Navigator. We have our universal page padding, left and right padding. That's the only thing that goes on this class and the only thing that goes on this div. This will keep unified horizontal padding across your entire build. And then we have our very powerful container class, which is going to center a container on the page with a max width global add-on set that will allow you to add a specific max width to that container. That's going to be the structure for most pages, for most sections. And then inside of that, we're going to have our components, our testimonial slider, our contact form, our information feature section, whatever. This is the core structure. This is how we build most sites, and this is what we recommend. Let's go to the next screen. We have default styles and global styles where it makes sense. For example, our margin system, our padding system. People want spacing global. So we have built it global. We have a whole margin system, a whole padding system, top, bottom, right, left. And using keyword searches, we are able to very easily navigate through all of these global classes. We have our margin. We have something special for tablet and something special for mobile, so that when you go and search for these classes, they return to you inside the Webflow styles panel in a neat and organized list for what you're looking for. Great. Let's go to the next image here. And then when you need to get custom, when you need to go inside of that core structure and start to build elements, we are calling these components. And components are a whole bunch of elements that come together to create one thing, whether that's your nav or your testimonial slider or your newsletter form submit. So that when you see this content, when I read through this testimonial slider component, name, headshot wrapper, headshot layer, now I understand what I am looking at. I can go and open up the page on the live site and I know, or I probably know, what those classes are doing. So we're specific in the naming when there is something visual on the page and specific that can give the non-experienced person a cue as to what they're editing. Those are the...
All right. So can anybody confirm that in the comments? But it looks like we should be back. Dang.
We lost all of our watchers.
We did. We lost them, but they could be refreshing. So just give them a sec here.
It could be refreshing.
Yeah, it's freezing again. Damn it. It's not. Oh, okay. We're back and it's good. All right. So, shit. Well, okay. Now we're back. I'm not sure what's happening there from a glitch. We were just coming back and going to release the link to people who were going to download this. And Vi was saying, let's keep this a secret for the live stream audience. But yeah, I wonder what's going on with that because, again, my internet is strong. The stream is reading fine on my end, but YouTube is lagging out a little bit here. So apologies for that technical glitch. Damn.
Okay.
Well, okay, let's get back to it.
Okay, so I'll close it up. Yeah, I'll close it up here. I don't know where we cut out, but we're using client first. We use it on our big sites. We use it on our small sites. We have our 5-year plus experienced people using it. We have our beginner team using it. It's a powerful system. It has a lot of flexibility. And when all of you go and play with it and have fun with it and start building with it, please give us the feedback. That's part of this closed beta that we've been using it internally for months. We've been iterating for months, but now that it's out to the public, we want you to be here and tell us what's working and what's not working. This is an ongoing project for us. We're going to continue improving this and making it as clean and the best it can be forever.
Hey, Joe, I'm going to throw this to you kind of on the fly here because I don't think we talked about this, but first of all, where's the link? Let's go ahead and share the link and let people to start signing up for that. So maybe somebody can share that in the comments. We are back up to 95 viewers, so we didn't lose. Yeah, people are with us, so respect to all of y'all. We did cross 100 at a moment there. We were like 107, so share this with a friend. We back online. Okay, anyway, there we go. Crossed 100 again. All right, so Joe, are we going to invite people into Slack? How are we going to get that feedback? You just said we want to get feedback from people, so what's the best way to share people? Should we add them to the Sweet.js Slack channel and just have like a client system chat in there or something like that we can have people sharing feedback, or what? Because I think that's a good point that you said. We should be getting lots of good feedback from people.
Yeah.
And then maybe like a workshop, thinking, like a live workshop would be cool too, like we did with the team internally.
We can absolutely do a workshop. There's over 2 hours of video explaining this whole system that's going to get you started. But we did a workshop for this internally last week, and it was a huge win. We had people from all different experience levels learning something new. So we can do the workshops. For your feedback, for now, please send an email. That's going to be part of the official delivery. So we're going to share the Airtable form link. Fill out that link. That's going to put you on the list. And this week, we're going to prepare the clonable, transfer it to your Webflow account. You're going to be able to duplicate that as much as you want within your account and send us feedback as it comes in. You'll also be part of our list. So if we're doing a workshop, we'll send you an email to tell you where and when that workshop is.
Question, Joe. Not saying anybody in our audience would ever do this because y'all are all amazing. But what happens when somebody we transfer this site to publishes this as their clonable thing?
Oh, yeah. We close their Webflow account permanently. You'll be banned from the platform forever.
Please
don't. I mean, really, please. There's nothing that we can do, but we really do not want this to go out to the general public. We see you, everybody watching right now, is part of our core community, people that come here each week to listen to us speak. and we are valuing your opinions first, and then we give it out to the public.
Yeah.
So please just keep it to yourself. You're part of a private group, and let's keep it that way.
Yeah. And Rohan's saying, do not make it clonable on the Webflow showcase. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, do not do that.
That would be a big disappointment. We're trusting y'all here with this, but anyway. Okay, so let's move into the next section. Joe, what do we think? Do we open this? Do we share the link? Is the link out there for people?
I think Rohan is putting in his disclaimers before he shares.
Yeah, Rohan, let's share the link.
Do not share this with anyone. Do not make it clonable.
Just go ahead and share that.
Let's share that link. We're good.
Rohan with the crowd here, so that they can fill out that form, and then we're gonna transfer the site manually. So okay.
Yep.
And then we're gonna jump on while that's happening to CMS tips and tricks. And really, we're not gonna get into the nitty gritty of stuff here. But we did want to like talk about a few things, especially as it relates to like the CMS itself, binding data, using some of these components. And so things that especially for like me have helped. And so I kind of wanted to talk about a couple of things here. The biggest one for me that I learned early on working with the CMS was the same way I'm doing a global style guide or a global class system, or that I'm building some kind of page where I can manage my typography and whatnot. I would also build my components kind of on those pages, right? So early on when I started playing with Webflow, I learned that when you bind data onto a CMS item and then you want to copy and paste that somewhere else, especially if it's on a template page, you can't do that without, you know, breaking all the data. It won't let you paste that or copy and paste that. And so I learned to create like a components page on my website or in my style guide pages. Let's say I was going to create a testimonial section or a blog section or something that I was going to reuse throughout the site, or that I might reuse throughout the site. I would go and create that in a different section with real data. And then when I need to copy and paste that over into somewhere, I don't have to worry about the data being bound or breaking that or whatever. I just go over here and then I remap that data to the CMS. Super easy. And so it saves you a lot of time as you go through. That's something that I think you all should for sure pay attention to. Some people talk about mapping out the CMS structure ahead of time. Go ahead, Joe.
Well, there's, to what you just said, there is a piece in Client First that thinks about this specifically. Remember, Client First is built for Webflow. It's not based on traditional CSS. It's not based on traditional HTML. So, like you said, you have to copy something from a static page to a CMS page. That's a great practice. That's going to improve your workflow. That's one reason why we have the page wrapper as the outermost element of your page. So you can quickly take pages, move them to a different page, copy them to a template page. You can take all the content in a page and copy paste in one click rather than move everything into a div and spend a full minute going and dragging that in.
Yes.
So that's something we have in Client First. That's a great one. Absolutely.
Yeah, and I kind of wish Webflow would let you grab multiple, you know, when you copy or grab. But what Joe's talking about there is a perfect way to do that, right?
Yeah.
I do that all the time, is when I need to transfer something, a lot of elements to another element, I'll drop them all inside of a div. But you learn a tip early on. If you put all that in a page wrapper and you just need to grab that page, grab that one element, it's got the whole page in it. It's super easy. Okay, so let me see. Some people talk about like, and I was talking to Joe about this isn't really important if you know what you're doing and you're just jumping right into Webflow. You can create, you know, your CMS structure on the fly. But if you're working with somebody who maybe you need to get data from, or they want to have some kind of custom collection structure on their site, you may want to think about mapping out your CMS ahead of time. This goes into how you name things, right? You could start thinking about how to name them before you start building. And you can also then make sure that the client understands that, oh, we're structuring data. This is something we understand as web developers, but clients don't often have these thoughts, right? And so they don't know what a design system is. They don't know what style guides are. They don't know what naming conventions are. And they for sure don't know about what structured data is. And so this is that consultant process where you get to kind of be their Sherpa and guide them. And so like at the beginning, when you're doing some of that scoping that we talked about and how to price your Webflow projects last week, you can get to the bottom of that by kind of helping them outline the structure in the CMS. And so that's a smart thing to do. Let's see, creating symbols last.
And
yeah, go Joe.
I'll add more to that naming. Naming is incredibly important. Put in description inside your CMS fields. Name your classes, name the fields so that somebody can understand it other than you. A lot of people are building sites for themselves. They understand, they know what this is. But really, we're usually not building sites for ourselves. We're usually building sites for others, for our clients. So to be able to open up Navigator and read through what the elements are on that page, that's powerful. That's going to improve your workflow, even as you, the developer. If I can open up Navigator and see a list of all the sections, I click on a section, and that's essentially an anchor scroll inside Designer. I click on the section, I scroll to that part of the page. That's part of Client First. We have a layer specifically for anchor scrolling inside Designer. So that's how different this is than your traditional methods, that these are tricks and tips to help you move faster in Designer. Yeah. That's a really important thing for everybody.
Yeah. And then general CMS tips and tricks, check out the CMS library, CMS docs by Finsweet, obviously. We are, pushing the limits of what you can do with the Webflow CMS. And so once you hit those Webflow limits, come find us over at, CMS docs. And that's where you start your real journey of getting nitty gritty with a little bit of, custom code and functionality inside of there. So, okay, real quick, we're going to talk a little bit about the process of handing off a project to a client, and kind of going through the workflow of this. But again, just like we did in the last section, we're not going to dive into too much detail. I do want to point out that we're hovering around the 120, 117 live viewer mark. So thank you all. Somebody was saying, Ali was saying, last week we said if we crossed 100, we were going to build a Finsweet merch store. I don't know if that carried over today.
Well, hold on.
Maybe we'll see. Maybe we'll see. We didn't carry that over to today. We did not say that today. So Ali was asking if we get 100 likes on the video. Let's see if we get 100 likes on the video.
I'll take that one.
All right. Okay. Client project handoffs, Jake.
Handoffs. So important. So important. So you can do an amazing job the entire project. And if your handoff sucks, you're leaving your client with a last thought of, well, this project sucked. You have to follow through to the very end. Even if the site's launched or you're paid or whatever, you have to follow through and make sure that that person is fully satisfied before you say, hey, see you later. Now anything else is something outside of this project. So the first question, you have to make sure that you understand and get them to answer this in a full, meaningful way. Do they need designer access? Does this site need to live in their account? Or do they truly only want editor access and it's going to live in your account? So this is incredibly important. Making this change is very difficult in Webflow. You have to unpublish, you have to transfer, you have to deal with account issues, with free accounts. It's a mess. So set it up correctly the first time. We used to have client sites inside our account, and we used to have the client billing and all that. This was even before client billing. And that was just a terrible, terrible mess, because there would always be someone that says, hey, I need to do this. Well, you can't do that in Editor. You have to do that in Designer. I need to do this. I hired a marketing company that's doing an SEO thing, and they work with Webflow, and they want access to the site. Well, you can't do that either. And then transferring that is going to take your time, and what, you're going to bill for an hour of your time to transfer a site from 2 years ago. It's a mess. So we, by default, transfer every site. You cannot have your site inside of our account. It is your account. You take it. You own it. If you want us in the future, we will help you. But you have to find this out about your client. You have to understand what they want and make that very important decision before the site goes live. So that's number one, figuring that out. Anything to add to that, Reimar? Did I miss anything?
No, I agree. I think I would like to point out, going back to security, I've heard people saying things like sharing passwords with clients, or they'll have a client create an account and then give them the password so they can log in. And for a number of reasons we discussed in the security episode, that's a bad idea. So yeah, you want to give it to the client. It's their asset. You don't want to be responsible for it. You don't want to, like Joe said, every time they have any little like issue that you got to like be bothered with this, right? It's like, hey, I'm going to hand this over. You paid us to build your website. Unless you're building a maintenance business or like because I will say there are some people who are taking a different approach to this, and you may be building that package around your business, right? So you may be building hands-on maintenance, marketing arrangement, whatever. You may be using Webflow's client billing system to add on some profit to the hosting, to manage all that. That's cool too, right? It just depends on your business model. We don't do that stuff, right? And so we're not saying that you shouldn't or that you can't, but yeah, we do not do this. We like to hand that over and just let the client have it. And then if they need other stuff, they can invite us into their team account, right? So it increases the cost on their end a little bit. But again, now we're secure. We know when we're accessing Webflow, we're accessing it directly through, Webflow's secure channel here, and there's no issue, right? So yeah.
That's a good point. Great point. Agree with that completely. And one more thing to add to that, as you get bigger clients, that is a requirement to have full ownership of their site. So in the beginning, we used to do it because it was local business and small business, and they didn't really care about the edits. But now every client that we bring in, they would not even consider having that in our account. Like we couldn't even ask them that question because it would be an absolute no. So as you get to bigger clients, that becomes less okay to host it in your account. But if it works for you, do it. It is a good strategy for maintenance.
Yep. Okay.
Great. And then onboarding. Let's quickly, one more thing, onboarding. I'll touch this one quick. Give your clients tutorials how to use their site. Don't just give them the site and say, hey, see you later. This is it. Go to Webflow University. Bye-bye. At least film a 10 or 15-minute video of you going through and explaining what's going on. Hey, I did this for you. This is how you edit this content. I did this in the CMS. This is how you edit this. Just that 15-minute video can improve your workflow because you get less questions, you get a happier client, and you get someone that's more self-sufficient with their website after, which I think is one of the core benefits of Webflow, onboarding somebody to their website. That's what Client First is for. That's what onboarding is for. So that's it.
Yeah.
Client handoffs.
And you could create a series of videos that's kind of generic to all of Webflow, and then maybe create a custom intro for that series to each client, so it doesn't need to be customized. It doesn't need to be real crazy. I think Webflow even creates like a clonable documentation with some white label style videos that you can hand off to people about how to use editor. And so like, you don't have to create these if you don't want to. It would be great to have them be branded and kind of like, it'd be you and the person they've interacted with. And so like, there's a lot of value to be had there by you creating kind of your own documentation and onboarding process. But yeah, what Joe's getting to here is that there should be some kind of process for handing over the site and onboarding the client so that they're comfortable understanding how to get into the designer, how to get into the settings panel, how to add content to the editor, etc. And so, yeah, just think through some of how you deal with that onboarding of new client sites. So Q&A, we're live. Okay, just real quick to remind people, we did cross 120 thresholds. So here we go. We're still at 77 likes. So we're still 23 likes away from a Finsweet merch store. People are saying, wasn't there an episode? Let's see. I think it was like, wasn't there an episode where Joe was going to do a cooking episode? I do remember that, but it wasn't. See, we set these thresholds per episode. They don't carry over. Yeah. Right. So like if we say in an episode, Joe will do a certain thing for 100. If we hit 100, that's that episode. It's not like if we do that next episode. So Joe, but they are asking for cooking tutorials. Here it is. Victor was saying, was there supposed to be a show at Joe's Kitchen if we cross 100?
We should do a cooking show for the time in between your phone calls. So in 30 minutes, you can have your meal fully prepared, full balanced meal, and you can get to your next Zoom call.
Boom. I think that's the next hit live stream, Joe, is Joe's Kitchen here, effing kitchen. People do seem to want a merch store, so that keeps coming up. All right.
Let's see some questions. Come on.
Yeah,
I'm a lot of comments, not a lot of questions.
Let's see. Somebody did ask something just a second ago here that I wanted to show. Let's see. Do you create a free account for them, then transfer it from your account, and then set up a host, publish it? Does client need an account plan also in order to transfer a large site? So how do you deal with that with the client, Joe?
Yeah. So what we do for most companies is we're going to set them up with their own account. They can make their own account in Webflow. They have to now apply a paid account plan for 1 month so we can make that transfer. They receive the transfer. They do not need a paid account to continue using the site. They can turn that paid account off, and then they can apply hosting to the website. And once the hosting's applied, then we're good to go. They have it in their own account, and we're good. A lot of our clients are doing team accounts. Team accounts do cost a lot more money. It is on the more expensive side.
Yeah.
But that is a way to not share passwords. Of course, if they have their own account and they need us to make an update, they are sharing their password. They are not inviting us to a team seat. So be aware of that.
Got it. Okay. Ezekiel Rochat was asking, rather confused by Webflow plans. I think I screwed myself getting a pro plan instead of going with a team plan. No, I don't think so.
No.
As an individual, you want that pro plan. That pro plan allows you to build kind of as many Webflow sites as you want inside of your plan with some expanded CMS limitations. So I think it's like 50 items and I think there's from the free plan where you only get like 2 pages, and I don't know if you can create that many CMS items or whatever. And so like you want that pro plan to be able to have a bunch of accounts. The team plan is when you want to bring other people in to collaborate on those projects. So if I need more people with designer access versus editor access, then you might need a team account. If you have a bunch of devs that need to get into the back end there. But no, that may not be a big problem for you there. Ezekiel, if you have other questions about that, feel free to leave them in the comments. Let's see.
We have a question from Abdul Wahab. Any feedback? Yeah. Oh, okay, Susan.
No.
Okay, Susan, my client came to me with a Teams plan in place and they really messed up CSS. Okay, I've heard that one before. Yeah, that's a fact. That happens.
Even when we hand off with the client first, right? Customer gets in there, they start adding elements, they start styling stuff. You can't help what a client's going to do. That gets difficult when, let's say, a customer comes back to you a year later and they're like, hey, we want to do X. And surprise, surprise, we've been in here playing with Webflow this whole year, adding components and systems and things and not really naming anything. And so like, how do you deal with that, Joe?
And that's the reason for client first. We're using our iterations of client first on our clients' projects, and we're telling them about it. But now that we have a more formalized system, I'm hoping that some of our clients will take the hour to go and really review this system so that they know what they can touch, what they can't touch, what they can create new without any worries. And yeah, we're trying to fix this issue, Susan. That is definitely an issue. When do you feel the client first design system will go live? So this is the last iteration step. This is the closed beta. So I don't know, maybe a month from now, a month and a half from now, I would expect everybody that's using this to have at least one build in. And based on that build, give us the feedback. And we're going to make a final iteration before going live. And we will continue to iterate. Not big changes. We're not going to change the whole system. But if we see, hey, this is a class that people are needing, or this is a class that's getting in the way, we can add and remove as needed.
Yeah. Well, Jay said something here as a response to what you were talking about as named backups in Webflow, where you talk about before, where the client messes something up. That's fine and good, but if the client adds something that they actually need, you can't just override that. So if the client added a page and they created their own naming structure for that page, you can't just like go back to a backup and throw that information out to restyle it, right? You may need to rebuild that component, but yeah, that's not a solution there. Let's see, Joe, you had a question that you were.
Abdul asked about the BEM system.
Oh, okay.
So his question is, what do we think about the BEM system? BEM naming, this is good, but it also has a learning curve. There is a learning curve in understanding how that naming goes. And we think the learning curve is just a bit too high for somebody that's not in the industry. Yeah. For someone that's been doing websites, they could probably pick this up in a few days. For our clients, it's not human readable. It's just not. There are things that are good about it that we did take. There are things that we completely threw away because, remember, this is a system built on traditional CSS and HTML development. Remember this. Do not look at these past systems because they're built for other things. We're using Webflow. This is not traditional. This is a new system, and we need to approach that with a new way to name classes.
Yeah.
So that is why we are not using that, and we do not support that on our sites.
Well, and if you think about BEM, it's a great system if the only person who's going to be interacting with the website is also a web developer who's formally trained in BEM, right? Because this creates the same type of structure that we're trying to recreate with this naming system internally for client first driven system. But that was structured, like Joe said, for CSS as developers see it, right? And so you're never going to get a Joe Schmo in there changing things because they're just never going to get into the CSS. Whereas you could get a designer or somebody else kind of getting into Webflow, and to make that easy for them, that onboarding process easy for them, that's kind of where this focus is. It's like, let's take the best of some of what BEM does. Let's take, you know, some of this style guide stuff. Let's take those best practices, kind of mix them all together and come up with something that's Webflow specific, strong for doing exactly this kind of thing. So yeah. Let's see this. Can you give me the process and steps for when you start a new project, like setup steps? I think we're going to do a whole episode on this because we're probably going to release our ClickUp template as like a tool, just like we did with this client first naming convention. We've got like a template that we've created that basically from onboarding the customer all the way to handing off the site has like every step you could think of, from SEO optimizations to form validations to individual structures with checklists per page so that when you create a new page, it gets a new item. And so I think we will go through that in an episode upcoming. So Travis, keep an eye out for that. Let's see.
We have a lot of questions about backups. I don't know which one to pick specifically. Maybe we have one from Babis. Gabrielle, do you use backups, especially when you use Zapier? And a lot of people asking about backups here. Backups are really good in Webflow, but they should not be used as a normal workflow thing to do. They're not perfect. We have absolutely run into issues where we back up and something is not exactly how it was supposed to be. I've backed up and there was a page that had all of its classes missing and the classes were almost ready to be deleted from the site. I've backed up and an integration is broken. I've backed up and there was something wrong with the page, something different that was not there previously. It usually works, but don't make it a habit of, oh, something happened, back up. Something happened, back up. You have to be careful about them.
Yeah. I wish Webflow allowed you to copy and paste from a backup into the new project without renaming the classes, right? That would be so good. So nice. That way I could archive a project piece, and if I needed it, I could go back to the backup, grab it, copy and paste it in, and it wouldn't duplicate my class structure or interactions or any of that stuff. That would be cool. If you're listening, Webflow, holla at your boy. Okay, let's see. This is maybe a good one here. Other than being difficult for clients, what do you think of using VW in combination with EMs for sizing, like T-Rick's wizardry method?
Yeah. Well, I will say, as a company, we do not support the wizardry style. That is creative. It's a very cool way to build websites, but we think that learning curve is too high, that it requires special knowledge in order to understand that system. So as a company, we have decided that is not an approach we want to take or an approach that we will support.
Yeah.
With VW, be careful with those. They're powerful, but if you have a whole VW site, it can become very messy and very difficult to maintain for someone that doesn't know that system. Yeah. So that is not something we support.
Yeah, and this all comes back to, again, your personal user style and what you're trying to accomplish, right? So learning the wizardry method could help you learn, and it could be valuable to build responsive sites. Again, what we're focusing on here and the focus for this piece is specifically how do you build and scale an agency around this so that lots of people can kind of jump in and use this, and also that then your clients can kind of manage and update these sites with some level of confidence, that they don't have to learn all this technical stuff. And so those are the two thresholds that we kind of ran everything through here. And so Are there valuable resources in other places? Sure. Are there tips and tricks that you might want to explore and learn, and you should learn and explore? Sure. Again, it's all about how you optimize your own workflow. This is just the lens that we filtered it through. So let's see what else coming in here. DW gives bottom, left, right scroll bar for no reason. Yeah, I don't know, Joe.
Yeah,
Jay?
different. Well, yeah, different browsers have different reactions to viewport width with their scroll bars. Using viewport height on mobile, depending on that mobile browser, they look at viewport height in a different way. This can be dangerous. I'm not saying don't use viewport height or viewport width, but it's building a whole site with this may seem good, but I do not think it's good. 4-point technique will keep things neat. Yep, that is absolutely correct. We have the 4-point system built into client first. If there's no reason to change it, you have a neat and organized 4-point system ready for you.
Let's see. This is a good question. Do you guys keep a copy of the projects that you transfer?
Absolutely.
I know I typically do.
Absolutely.
Create an exact replica of it and transfer off the original to the client. This way, if they screw something up and they need another copy of it, you don't just lose all that work. So yeah, I agree. I think that's probably a smart move.
Yep.
Let's see. Rymar, what I do is open a preview and backup live next to each other, compare. That's what I meant. Sure, that's a great approach. Somebody was asking about, do the questions need to be related to the topic of the show? I think that might have been earlier. No, if you have other questions, you can feel free to ask them. Let's see. Ever leave something on a site that shouldn't have been there and transfer to a client, which should be on a pre-launch checklist. Yeah, got to go through each of those sections page by page. And this is also a client's responsibility to have a little bit of a punch out with you, right? That's what we do is we have a phase of QA, and then the client has a phase of QA, and then before we go live, we've ideally kind of, all gone through the site with a fine-tooth comb. Any thoughts on that, Joe?
Well, yeah, we need to share our list. We have a list. It's a combination of our list, things that we've learned. We've also taken the Webflow Enterprise list. We have a list of requirements from Webflow Enterprise that is required for our sites. That's done on every single site we produce. So that's a full list that we will share at some point. Do you know any way to modify Webflow Editor using custom code? In my case, just changing the language. Well, there's certainly a way to do it, but I do not have a firm answer for you on how to do that right now.
Yeah, and we've talked about why this may not be the best idea. I could see where if you wanted to change the language or something like that. I'm not sure that I would recommend doing this for something you're going to hand off to anybody else if that's going to change their designer when they load the page or something like that. I don't know. I'm not sure why you would want to do that, but I don't have any tips for that. Okay.
We have 12 o'clock or 1 o'clock. We have 1 o'clock. We have 100 likes. I see 100 too. I see 100 too. Okay.
Okay. What's that mean?
Wow. All right. What do we have to do? I don't know.
We got to build.
You're in charge of the giveaway for this merch store, right? Okay.
So we're gonna have to do a little Printful integration on our website. We're gonna have to do some a simple little something. So stay tuned. I don't know how fast that'll happen. Everyone, it is something we've been kind of toying around with internally, but no guarantee on the date on that, but we will now add that to the pipeline. And I know internally we've been kind of wanting to do something like that. So externally now, I guess we got to make that real, Joe.
yeah, we have to. Great.
Free hats for the 104 likes. Nah, no free. We may give away some stuff as we go, especially if you're in, I know Printful has quite a bit of shipping integrations. And so the biggest concern that we have a lot of times is shipping internationally and not being able to kind of include everybody. Yeah. So that's kind of been our concern through here. But we'll figure out the best thing we can do to try to cover as much as possible. I think that'll be a Printful integration probably with a Webflow site, and we'll just do some limited items, and it'll be fun. We've been toying with even having like each of the designers kind of compete about what item they might throw in the Finsweet store. So we're gonna have to get real serious about this now. So let's see.
And let's okay, before we leave, noble status. Okay, so Jay, this is now out of our hands, unfortunately. We have this app, it's working. We were under the impression that Airtable had a very fast review process and that we would get this app back right away, but it seems that it's a much more intense process than we were aware of. So we passed their functionality review. We, I think, just passed the security review, and now we have to pass the design review. So we're just waiting here. We're getting the updates. They're telling us to put a privacy link in this modal, little tiny things, but we are really just waiting for them. So I wish I could say that we're launch ready, but we have to wait for them to approve.
Yeah, and what happens is that it's not like we make a change and send it back, and then like immediately they respond. It's like days in between
a few
the
days,
review, and
yeah.
so it's like,
well, it's maybe there's a lot of Airtable apps coming.
yeah. Okay, so
all right, let's close it down. I'll give a final note on the
people can order locally. That might be an approach for people who can't be fit in the market. So
That's
yeah,
cool.
Okay. All right,
That's
Joe.
cool.
Send them out. What do you got?
Yeah, so client first, if you entered your email on the Airtable URL, it's pinned on this chat. You can still do it now. Please get this project, review it, take your time to watch the videos and understand what this is and why you should use it. And please give us feedback. Even if you don't like it, if you use it and you say, hey, this sucks, tell us why it sucks. We want to know. We're using it for our flow, but maybe you have a unique thing that can really help us improve this. So we're looking for you to help us, and we are looking to use this for everything. So if you start to get into this system, everything we release in the future will be part of this system. So you can onboard to Finsweet products and Finsweet tools very easily.
Not to mention, we may or may not be working on some referrals type systems and some recruiting type systems. And so learning these kind of systems and getting comfortable with these processes is a great way that when we have opportunities to bring new people on, that you're ready to do some of that, right? And can work inside of the structure and inside of the way that we're operating here. And so if that's something that appeals to you, this is for sure something you should be looking at. Let's see. There was one more thing I wanted to address before we went. Oh, the G-Tag course. People were asking.
G-Tag course.
Yeah. So
nice.
I think it's all been recorded. Yeah. It's in the process of being edited up right now. Yep.
Yeah. Cool.
All right. Well, hey,
that's it.
We have a
great show.
Not only did we break some records today, we had a flawless production. I do declare. So anyway, we're getting all. It only took us 13 episodes, but we're getting there. So thanks to everyone again for showing up. We appreciate the heck out of all of you. Oh, Joe, that was one thing. I think we should open up a Slack channel in the Sweet.js for the client first thing. So in addition to the email stuff, like, let's invite people into that and have a forum for people to chat and talk about that openly. So
sure.
Yeah. Okay, that's it. Anything else, Joe, before we go?
Thanks, everybody. Breaking the record is awesome. I feel great. Over 100 likes. Thank you.
There you go.
Really appreciate everybody being here.
Row. Second.